Hello, and welcome to the Uplifted Hand. Today we're going to go over Psalms 1 through 2 and 8. Okay, so Psalm is going to feel very different because we're not following one continuous story. The Psalms are songs, prayers, praises, and sometimes cries for help from God's people. We don't always know who wrote them or exactly what is happening. So, as we read, a helpful question is, what is this psalmist experiencing, and what is he learning about God? So, Psalm 1, verses 1 through 3, begins with two ways to live. This psalmist describes someone who doesn't let ungodly voices determine how he lives. Instead, he delights in the law of the Lord, meaning God's teachings and instruction. Then we're given this picture. That person is like a tree planted beside water. Its roots have a steady source of nourishment, so it grows and produces fruit in his season. It doesn't mean every season is easy. The picture is showing us that someone rooted in God has a steady source to keep drawing from. Okay, now verses 4 through 6, we see the opposite. The psalmist continues saying the ungodly are like chaff carried away by the wind. A chaff is like the dry, lightweight outer part of a grain that gets separated and blown away. So the contrast is one is a tree with deep roots in water, and the other has no roots at all. And Psalm 1 opens Psalm with a choice. What is shaping your life, and where are you putting down your roots? So now we're in Psalm 2, verses 1 through 12, and everything suddenly zooms out. So we have to remember, Psalms is not the same story each time. So now we see entire nations and their kings are rebelling against God and his anointed. And in ancient Israel, a king was anointed with oil as a sign that he had been chosen and set apart by God. So these rulers are basically saying, we don't want God. We don't want his king ruling over us. Then the scene shifts from earth to heaven. And while these rulers are raging below, God is still on his throne. Their rebellion cannot overthrow his plans. So God says his king is establishing on Zion, referring here to Jerusalem. And then the king speaks. Oh my goodness. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son. The psalm ends by warning these rulers to stop fighting God and serve him instead. So blessed are all they that put their trust in him. And there's the connection. Psalm 1 showed one person choosing whether to follow God's way. Psalm 2 shows whole nations trying to reject it, but both ask, will you resist God or will you trust him? Okay, so this part of the study really got my gears going because I was like, yes, this makes sense. I now understand why they put a New Testament verse in the Old Testament in the Come Follow Me. So, Psalm 2, verse 7, and Acts 13, verses 30 through 33. Now, let's go back. Thou art my son. Now, we were just talking about the word anointed. Now, the Hebrew idea behind anointed one gives us the word Messiah, the promised Savior. So, how do we know Psalm 2 is pointing us towards Jesus? Because the New Testament makes that connection. Hundreds of years later, in Acts 13, Paul is teaching about Jesus Christ and his resurrection. And he quotes this psalm, Thou art my son. And that's exactly what the Come Follow Me asks us to notice this week. These ancient psalms contain words that ultimately point toward Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah. And Psalm 22 is going to make that connection even stronger than this one right here. Now, the slide before this, my mind got blown and my gears got shifted, but this one made me cry. So we're going into Psalm 8, verses 1 through 9, and the scene changes again. And this psalm is attributed to David, and it shows a picture of him looking into the night sky, and he sees the moon and the stars, and he calls them the work of thy fingers. And looking at something so huge, so enormous, David asks, What is man that thou art mindful of him? Now, thinking about the word mindful, it means to think about or care about someone. So he's basically asking, God, you created all of this. So why would you care about all of us? Yet God does. David explains that God has given humanity purpose and responsibility over his creation. And look at where these Psalms have taken us. So, Psalm 1 began with one person beside a river. Psalm 2 zoomed out to kings and nations. And Psalm 8 zoomed all the way out to the heavens. And after seeing how enormous God's creation is, we're brought right back to the individual. The God who created all of it is still mindful of you. So Come Follow Me invites us to think about that this week. What part of God's creation makes you stop and think about your relationship with him? Now, next we're going to head into Psalms 19 through 23, all the way to the Lord is my shepherd. Thank you for watching The Uplifted Hand. We'll see you tomorrow.